Welcome to this episode of the Upfront Podcast. As always, I am your host, Nina Mueller, and this is the place where you get your dose of upfront and honest conversations with people from all around the world. Enjoy the show. My guest today is Juliet Taylor, who grew up in a Jewish modern Orthodox family in London, England. She moved to Israel 9 years ago and worked as the educational director for a school in Israel. In the midst of her daily life, slowly, a mental health crisis crept in and altered her life. Juliet was able to change her perspective and focus on what she values most, which eventually brought her to expressing her feelings through art in her spoken poetry. She has just finished her master's degree in early childhood education. We are speaking and working towards eliminating the stigma of mental health issues, going through countless lockdowns and a war by herself, and what ultimately matters most in life. Hi, Juliet. How are you doing?
Hi, Nina. I'm great, thank you. It's a beautiful sunny day in Tel Aviv.
Oh, it is. It's amazing. So when we actually met, you told me a bit about like a sort of life event that happened and that made you reflect upon life generally and yourself a lot more. Can you tell me a bit more about that and what that brought on for you?
Yes. And you know, one of the most incredible things about talking to you like this, and when I met you, how I just was able to talk about it, is for years, I think many of us do this, and it's why we look at other people and don't realize that we all have a story and we're all carrying around pain and things from our past and things that we're working on and trials and tribulations because life is hard. We all have our internal worlds going on all the time. We are a world unto ourselves. And it's kind of like in Pirkei Avot, if I'm going to be very spiritual, because that's kind of what I'm rediscovering about myself since my life event, which was a complete and total breakdown. The Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, says that if you save one life, it's as if you've saved the world. And that's kind of like what you've said. And my world came crashing down. And, you know, if I'm honest, I wish I could say to you that something terrible happened that caused it. I obviously I don't wish that, but that would almost be easier to justify it. And I think that often when we're depressed or we're going through hard times, we want to have some huge reason because it's easier to have a reason. It's easier to explain it to other people than to say life is hard and I couldn't cope anymore and something happened in my body, and I am a coper and I'm like a really hard worker and I'm very hard on myself and I'm a perfectionist, and it was very hard for me as a manager of 20 people and as a leader and as a boss to admit that I couldn't continue like this, and my body stopped wanting to continue and my mind stopped wanting to continue, and it all went like topsy-turvy and I just wasn't coping anymore. And I had a mental breakdown. And I can't believe I'm sitting here on a podcast saying this out loud, publicly, potentially to the world. Don't know how many people will hear this. And you know what? Whether it's 100, 1,000, or, you know, however many, it doesn't matter, because I think we all hide what we're going through so much that the stigma will continue about mental illness, about, you know, inner peace and health and how to get out of it, you know, because when you're in it, it's black, it's so dark, and you feel you're on your own and you feel like no one understands. And I just want people to know that there are many people that understand and are going through the same thing.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of people who do try to like rationalize their mental health issues away. But at some point, I do feel like a lot of people eventually reach a stage where you can't rationalize it by saying, oh, look at how privileged I am. I have all these things in my life and I'm healthy and happy, and healthy in a more physical sense, I guess. Not mentally, obviously, but you know, that you do have all these things, but they do not necessarily make up your happiness.
And yeah, you know, it actually would have been, as I said, and it's hard to say this out loud because it sounds so spoiled and so self-indulgent. And that's how you feel when you're depressed and you're sad. You feel guilt and you feel like you're being self-indulgent and you're wallowing. But it's so much more than that. And it becomes out of your control when you don't stop and take stock and take the time for yourself to really work through things. I think that there were so many causes that made me have this like turning point, rock bottom, emotional breaking point that I couldn't even pinpoint one thing. But I will tell you that since I've come out of it and I've been talking about it and meeting people and being so much more open about myself and to other people and new experiences, that so many people say, wow, I relate to that. I went through that. Everyone's been through it. But you know what? I never heard that once before, ever.
Maybe that's part of the issue, I think. If we normalize not being okay as well, just not feeling perfectly happy all the time, if we normalize not being perfect and happy all the time, then I think that becomes, I don't know, sort of a relief for a lot of people, I do think. Do you believe that?
100%. Yes,
Mm.
I completely believe that. And I'll tell you that, I'm doing my master's right now in early childhood education with advocacy and leadership. And, in my work, I'm advocating for high quality education for early childhood, for young children. And part of high quality education, which we did not get in school, because the research on brain development was not where it is now. And in 30 years, it will be in a completely other place as well as we
Mm.
learn more and technology gets better. And I'll tell you that, happiness is not the state that we actually should be in all the time. And yet it's the thing that we strive for the most. And it's the thing, when I talk to parents about resilience and how you build a child's inner strength, it's not about them being happy all the time. It's like, it's not the opposite, but it's that quote, the opposite of hate is ambivalence. Like,
Mm.
it's not love, it's ambivalence. And I think it's sort of the same with our emotions. We all think that we want to be happy, and happiness is the optimum state to be in. But you know what? Yes, happiness is beautiful, and you need to have those moments and those crescendos and then those climaxes in life. But that's not actually what the day-to-day of life is about. And when we're constantly striving for this image of happiness that we see thrown at us through advertising, social media, our friends, the stories that we tell publicly, we're setting ourselves up for failure, because the real human condition is that we want to be in balance. We want to have those beautiful times, but we need to allow ourselves to be sad as well, and not to beat
Mhm.
ourselves up about it because we think that we should be this level of happiness that's unattainable to have all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as you said, I totally agree.
I just have to say, because I see it every day in my work.
Mhm.
Parents of very young children, what do they want? They think that they want their children to be happy all the time. This is where I was going before, but I lost my train of thought. Because it's like all this talk is so interesting and so inspiring. It takes me to so many places.
Mm.
Parents want their children to be happy all the time, and you have parents who actually say, I don't want my child to cry. Are they sad? And you know what, like, what we need to do, instead of not allowing a child to cry or wanting them to, this thing of being happy all the time and being satisfied all the time, we can't always get what we want. And we need to learn to be accepting of the harder times, the shitty times, as well as the great times. And so we need to know that, and we need to teach children from a young age to internalize that when things don't go our way, we can't stomp our feet. We can't give up. We can't tantrum. We can't say, no, but I want it. Because, as adults, we know life doesn't work like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do feel like even if you don't have kids yourself, I think it is on us as adults to role model, not like striving for chasing after one high after another and always chasing perfect happiness, but also being okay with being content sometimes, just, a balanced state as well.
Balance is the key. I think balance is the key, and I'm sort of an artistic, expressive person. Balance has always been hard for me. If I eat, I want the whole cake. if I have a pizza, I have the whole pizza. I can't just have a slice, right?
Mhm.
That's me. I want. I think that's many of us.
Mhm.
Restraint is hard. I see the YSL stilettos with the YSL as the heel, and I have to have them, and I took it home and I was like, if they don't fit, I'll just put it on a shelf. Didn't matter that I couldn't afford it. I still went and bought them, right? And it's just a lack of balance. We sort of tell ourselves this thing of like, but I deserve it. I work so hard. And there's an element of truth in that, right? And there's an element of enjoying the moment and doing those things and buying the shoes and eating the cake. However, if we buy every pair of shoes we want and eat the whole cake all the time, is that going to lead to happiness? Absolutely not.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Media, I think it is also perpetuated on social media. In my social media bubble, I think that's actually an expression that they do use because you do sort of tend to surround yourself with like-minded people even on social media. So in my sort of social media bubble, I do have a lot of people who have sort of started or are part of like the counterculture of all of those like, oh, everything is perfect and this is perfect and that is perfect and my relationships are all perfect and all of these like perfect images and everything. But I think the majority, I would say, of content on social media is perpetuating a completely false narrative of what life is supposed to be like and what life actually is like.
Yeah,
And
I
I
think
think younger people even more so, honestly, are gonna get a really wrong image about what life is really like and what it is or what it should be about.
Yeah, I mean, it's all a construct. It's all a constructed
Mhm.
image that's manipulated for money-making purposes at the end of the day. But I think that what you talked about with this counterculture, where people are actually being authentic, I think that, this is what I think Corona did. And this is what I feel about life and balance and, I say swings and roundabouts. Like, I think that with every bad thing that happens, there's a balance and something good will come out of it, even
Mhm.
if you don't see it in the moment. And I even mean that like with tragedies, and that doesn't take away from the tragedy, and it's not supposed to. We are supposed to feel immense pain in life, right? And we have to have this acceptance of it, but know that nothing is permanent. And the state that we are in now and the events that are happening to us now will change. Nothing stays the same. People don't stay the same. And I think like this whole connectedness thing that I'm talking about and this counterculture of spirituality that I feel is rising and rising and coming up. And I hear that you're seeing it too. And I think it's a reaction, it's an equal and opposite reaction to seeing all these socially constructed images of perfection that's shoved down our throats and is in the media, and you can't avoid it. I think it's, people are turning towards spirituality. And again, I think Corona shifted our perspectives. The first step is awareness. The first step to
Mhm.
recovery is admitting you have a problem. Um,
Mhm.
and so, like, the first step is the world waking up and all of us waking up. And again, I think it's this thing that, you hear people say it over and over, and I'm an example of it. And I can't believe I'm sitting here like this big fat cliche, but I had to hit rock bottom to evolve, because if I
Mhm.
hadn't hit that point, I was just continuing and continuing and continuing. And I was breaking, but I wasn't even admitting it to myself. I was thinking that I was just, being dynamic and hardworking and moving forward with my life. But I was just on a hamster wheel, and I wasn't moving forward, even though, I thought I was, because I was striving for the things that I was supposed to be doing at my age and at my level, And we think we want the car, we think we want the flash apartment by the beach, we think we want. And, some of that is true. It's
Mhm.
nice to have nice things. So it's not to say
Mhm.
we need to, let go of all the material things in life. I don't believe that. It's just about accepting, who we are, what our limits are, so we don't push ourselves to extremes.
I wanted to ask you whatever you're comfortable with sharing.
Of
How
course.
did you sort of figure out that you were going through a mental breakdown, as you phrased it?
Um, Such a good question. I didn't accept it for a really long time. I think that with COVID, I was really, really up and down for the whole however many years it went on for and is still going on. We had lockdown number one, and I was the happiest I'd ever been. It was the first time in my whole life that I hadn't had to work. And I was still getting paid a little subsidy, but enough to get by. I was free. I was for the first time looking after myself instead of just getting up, going to work, mindlessly doing what I thought I needed to do. And I didn't even realize I'd lost my excitement for new experiences because I was so used to doing what I had to do. So the first lockdown, I was absolutely high off my little face naturally. I was waking up every morning, doing an exercise video, making breakfast for myself. I was running along the beach. I did couch to 5K successfully. I was pushing myself. I was loving life. I lost a lot of weight. I was feeling uber confident. I had broken up with my ex-boyfriend, at the very start, just before the lockdown, and I actually felt freed from it. And then went back to work, and it was like, oh, this is fun. This is actually relief now. I'm going back to work. And all the chops and changes were fun for me because I am a person that embraces change. And while I accept change and I go with the flow, I think it chipped away at me without me even noticing. And by the time it came to the second lockdown, I think everyone in life had become much more insular. And I think that the age that I am, lots of my friends were very busy with their families because in Corona, there was no impromptu socializing. There was no going out for a glass of wine. There was no going to a bar or a club, which was not a huge part of my life because I'm sort of past the stage where I used to go out every night. But, I had a social life. I had my best friends who I love and were my support system. And I've lived in Israel for 9 years. I don't have my family here. My mom's not here, my dad's not here, and I don't see myself as the person that needs that. I'm not one of those humans who speaks to my mom every day. Sorry, mom. Like, we don't have that relationship. We're very connected and very close, but I don't need to talk to her every day to know that she's there. But with the real heavy part when Corona super kicked in for the first time in my life, and it brings a lump in my throat, which is how I know how real that was and how much it affected me. I felt alone. For the first time in my life, I felt alone because I lost my network as I had always known it. And it just acutely, Corona made me realize again where I was standing in my position in life and where I really was versus where I thought I should be or where I thought I would be now. And it was just like a stark realization of where I was at and the loneliness of living in a big city.
Did you live by yourself at that time?
Yeah, I've always lived by myself, unless I've been in a serious relationship where I've lived in the past with one ex-boyfriend. But yeah, I've lived by myself for the majority of my time in Israel, and I enjoy my own company. And I think that was the scariest part, that I have never been fearful of being on my own. It's never been something that scared me. I've always been pretty at peace with it, and things will come in their own time. And then suddenly, my anchor went, and all I felt was that I'd been working so hard for so many years. So I had this huge workload. And I felt like, what's it all for? COVID took away new experiences. It put us all in a box and all in an insulated shell with whatever we had created before it suddenly kicked in and pulled the rug out from under all of us. And it pulled the rug out from underneath me. Not immediately. Immediately, I was loving life, I told you, but with time, it was almost as if that hamster wheel that I'd been on for so many years of living and working and surviving here, because, we all know when we live here, this is a tough country to survive in on your own. Coming from a different country where we have a different culture, different sensibilities, you got to be, only the strong will survive. And I think I had been so strong and so independent for so long, I hadn't realized the toll it had taken on my mind and my body. And again, I'm talking about with you, and I feel the lump in my throat rising, which is for me my indication of when I've hit a nerve and I've hit something real. we strive to be the, independent women, and we are. But that doesn't mean that we don't want good relationships and that we don't want, a partner there to support us. And I just was acutely missing all of those elements. And all I could think about was the lack, what I didn't have. And then when I was back to work and everything was about COVID and, running a school, it became about corona and health and masks and taking temperatures every day. And my whole job, the joy of being with children was ripped out from underneath me, because as a educational director, it was no longer about the education. And then, Nina, as you definitely also experienced in May, there were rockets being thrown at us en masse. And I think you have fight or flight mode. And I'm always a fighter. And I fought and I, got myself through it. And again, I was on my own and the siren was going 5 times a night. You would wake up in the middle of the night. And my building, again, living on my own, the apartment I was in, it was a ground floor apartment at the side of a building, and the siren would go all night. I was with my dog, who would go crazy when the siren went, and I would have to run out of my apartment on my own, barefoot in the middle of the night, through the street, round into the building, and it was really traumatic. The building shook. Again, this acute feeling of I am on my own here. My friends would message, you'd be sitting in the corridor with the building shaking and the siren going, and you'd be getting all these messages from people going, are you okay? Are you safe? But you're on your own, We come into this world alone and we leave alone. And that's the fact. And being alone is listen, like it's our state of being. It has to be. And we want these connections with people, but we also have to be strong enough by ourselves. It all came crashing down on me, the harshness that I had given myself all my life about what I should be achieving versus, what's comfortable for me, and pushing myself as an independent woman surviving in this country and supporting myself fully. And lastly, you asked how I knew. I knew I was going to work at this point after the rockets were raining. And I manage a team of 15, all women at the moment, who have all moved here from a different country. And my job is to make sure that they are happy coming to work and they're passionate about what they do and they can give that all to children. And when you are in a state of acute stress, you cannot give your all to anyone. It pulled me down to such an extent that when we finally came back to school after a month or so, I was numb. Every day was getting a little bit worse. And it got to the point where I said to the owner of the school, I said to her, I've got nothing left to give. I can't come to this staff training. And I'm the one that delivers the staff training. We do it together. And I just said, I can't do it. I've got nothing to give. And she was like, yes, you can. You always can do it. You can do it. You got this. And I sat there like a shadow of myself. And they said, what are we going to do? And I lay on the floor in one of the classrooms and I said, I don't know. And they said, you need to stop. You need to take some time. There's the festivals for September, so take that time and then you'll come back refreshed. Okay, I pulled myself up. I went home. I managed to get to the end of the school year. I went home, got into bed and didn't get up. And I didn't make it back. I have never experienced a feeling like this before. Again, the lump is rising in my throat at the mere memory of it. I wasn't really eating. I didn't want to talk to any of my friends. My friends that I love, there was one time when one of them came round and tried to get me out, and I felt bad for her because she'd made so much effort. And so I went out and I walked with her and I didn't talk to her. I didn't say a word. It was the most awkward thing in the world. One of my best friends for life. And I no longer functioned. I was not myself. I was a shadow of myself.
I think that is actually why we have connected as quickly and immediately. I think when we met, the pandemic and then extreme isolation in some cases, and in my case, unfortunately too. So I think that is really why we connected so well. And then obviously the war and everything. Yeah, that weighs heavily. How did you eventually begin to start working through it?
It took me, I said before, acceptance is admitting you have a problem is like the first step. I had no energy to admit anything, you know. I wasn't even there anymore. I just felt like I'd lost myself entirely, and this whole feeling and experience was completely alien to me. So I didn't even know what was happening. It's very hard to explain what it was like. All I could do was sleep most of the time. Then when I was awake, I would just like lie on this, I would get up, lie on the sofa, attempt to eat something, not eat, and my friends would be like, just watch something on Netflix, just go out for a walk, and I would go out for the walk, and I would watch something on Netflix if I had the power, and it wouldn't help anything because I'd just be back to square one. I'll tell you this thing about the way that no one talks about it. It was very hard for my friends because I think they didn't know what to do with me because they had never seen me like this before. They had seen me sad before, right? I'm not going to sit here and say I don't have a tendency for, mood swings, or I've never been depressed before or sad, because I definitely have been through some really hard times while I've been here. But this is something different. This was, much deeper. But again, because people don't talk about this actual darkness where you do not get out of bed, you do not talk to people, I think my friends had no idea what to do. Again, one of my best friends was researching on the internet what to do with me. And, one of the pieces of advice that it said to her was, leave her because she needs to come to the realization on her own. And
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, and she did it. She did it. She left me at the time when I needed her the most. And she was one of 2 or 3 people here that I never thought would leave me. And she left me when I needed her the most, and it burned. It really burned. I know that she was doing it for my own good. And so she dealt with it the best way she knew how. But the fact that she had no idea how to deal with it, who to turn to, at the end of the day, they took me to the doctor. Like, they pulled me out of bed, took me to the doctor. And the first doctor I went to was just like, oh, here, you can have this herbal pill. And now, listen, don't get me wrong. That definitely, it's like Bach's remedy. I know that can work for some people. I'm not taking anything away from it, but I'm saying that I was in a serious mental health breakdown, and you do not prescribe someone in a serious mental health breakdown with a herbal pill, which is St. John's wort. Listen, people may not agree with me, but this was a chemical imbalance, and it needed more than that. And that doctor prescribed me that. And so I walked out of there just with nothing, with no strategies and no tools. And, honestly, because of stigmas actually surrounding pills, I didn't want to take pills. I was really anti, which is also on me. I was anti taking tablets to lift me out of this. Again, no one talks about it until they do, and until you open up and you say it to people, and they're like, oh yeah, I've been on that for years. Oh yeah, they prescribe everyone that. Oh, right. But nobody talks about that before the fact, only after the fact. I just knew that I was going down the path to nowhere, and I was, lying on the sofa, not knowing if I was going to be able to go back to my job. And so somehow, I don't know how, I managed to get myself on a plane, and I went to London. For a moment, I thought I had escaped it by, moving my body, getting on a plane and going to London. And what did I do in London? I got into bed on the other side in my childhood bedroom, got into bed. The only difference was my mum was feeding me. My poor mum was like, wow, where is my daughter? It was terrifying. It was scary. And I was having panic attacks. And I was saying, I don't know if I will ever come out of this again, because that's how dark it was. I'm lucky that I had the love and support of my parents. And again, I had the luxury of knowing that my job was waiting for me because of the support system that I did have after 9 years of building that. I just knew that I had to come back to Israel because I was having no positive impact on myself there. My mom made me doctor's appointments in London, and I refused to go, didn't get out of bed, and she couldn't get me there. There was nothing she could have done to force me, bar bringing a crane to get me out of my room or sectioning me. And I'm very glad she didn't do that to me. It wasn't the right thing for me. That's not to say couldn't have been right for other people. I came back. I was still terrible. And I called the owner of the school, Elvia, and I said, I want to come back. I want to come back. And she said, no, no, you're not ready. I can hear you're not ready and you're not coming back. It was the best thing she could have said to me. Again, it's that balance. This master's is one of the hardest things that I've had to get through this period of mental health breakdown. But no one can take it away from me. And so it's like, we need that balance and that discipline, because I could have given up. I was so close to giving up, but the people around me supported me not to give up. And I think if I can give a message to anyone who has family members or friends going through this total mental breakdown, like, be there. Don't give up on them, because they need you, even when they're pushing you away and they're being their worst selves. They need you and they need your support, because it's those connections that anchor us and give us what we need. And it can be the smallest thing that you do that makes a difference. And at the end of the day, you know, who I ended up accepting her offer to take me to the doctor was my boss, not my friends. And, you know, there's a part of me that's embarrassed to say that. And she's my boss and my friend. However, there's still a line there, right? And I would love to say to you, it was my best friend that took me, but she couldn't, because she had just had a baby, and that's life. Also recognize the people that we do have around us and the connections that are available, and the help and resources that are out there. I was lucky that mine was super close. Other people aren't as lucky. If you see someone that's struggling, and just be there, or let them know that you're there. And they may not take the offer, but it may make all the difference.
Maybe it took the authority of your boss to actually get you there.
Absolutely. You know, I actually, you know what, it's such a good point, because I want to say, truly, truly, my friends tried everything they could, but I wasn't accepting it. And yeah, you know what? I guess that is something about the fact that it was my boss who made it happen, and she managed to get me to go to the doctor. But you know what else she did? This is the thing. She not only took me to the doctor, it wasn't that she just took me to the doctor. She took me to the doctor and she advocated to me, because I couldn't speak, right? Like, I could speak a little bit at that point, but I couldn't express my needs because I couldn't recognize my needs. I don't think that you can articulate, you know, the difference between how you really are and how you are now. She saw the difference in a way that I don't think anyone else did, because she saw me every single day for 7 years on a professional and personal level. I think she just saw it happen before her very eyes, slowly, slowly, because it happened very slowly. It happened so slowly, I didn't see it coming. And then it was like, boom, couldn't get out of bed, couldn't lift myself up.
And then we also do have a tendency, because of, you know, everyday life and everything, we do tend to neglect that part. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, which is getting better, because there's increased awareness on like taking care of yourself, self-care, self-love, mental health, and the importance of taking care of your mental health. But I do think with daily life and all the responsibilities and everything that we as adults do have to manage, I think that does get like pushed away a lot of times,
Yeah,
like as not top priority.
100%. He prescribed me with pills to help me. At some point, I guess, when the pills started to kick in a little bit more positively, started to want to be better and want to be myself again. I've been in my bed for like 3 months now, and I've not been appreciating anything I do have. All I've been focusing on is what I don't have and what's not going right, and my lack instead of my abundance.
This pandemic specifically, and obviously in Israel, the wars and the terrorism and all that, that we have been surrounded by much more in the last, what, 1.5 years now. And yeah, I do think it comes down to stability and safety, which also like brings me to material possessions, which I do think, you know, it's sort of interesting. Like I started going down a bit of a minimalist route, and am downsizing now, and so on. And this is coincidentally how we met. As much as I've come to realize that I do love the nice things in life, connections and all that, but like in items and stuff, is I do think an abundance of materialistic things, especially in times when we're very isolated, like maybe other people had, their family around and a partner or whatever it was, like living with other people, which I think helped them a lot. But um, I think being surrounded by this abundance of materialistic stuff could cause the opposite effect when you're very, very lonely and very isolated. My personal opinion, I think.
Yeah, I think, you know what's interesting, and I spoke to my friends who have kids versus, how you and I experienced the pandemic.
Mhm.
And I think it's this thing that you started with, right? And you said to me that we've realized that other people have stories. But I think that actually, some of my friends with kids, not all of them, but some of my friends with children super suffered because they couldn't go out with their children and they were stuck in the house and they were stuck with their, I don't want to
With
say
them.
I don't want to say this out loud because it sounds bad, right? And again, by the way, you know what? Like, this is taboo. This is taboo, right? For parents, mothers to say, I'm having a really hard time stuck at home with my kids and they're driving me insane and I want to kill them, right? Because I've heard it. I hear it in my job secretly, right? And that's real. I was raised to think that, you go to university, you get a good job, and then you find a husband and you get married and everything will be rosy, right? And when that doesn't happen, we're like, what the fuck? Right? I'm deserving and I'm amazing. Why doesn't, And it leaves us kind of like, okay, well, what do I have? All right, I'm an independent woman, right? And again, we are, but we shouldn't have this ridiculous stigma around also needing love and a partner and being assertive about our needs in terms of that. It's not weak. It's not weak to want love and to want a family or to want to be in a relationship. And it's also okay to not want that, right? And to not want children. I think, we all think that what we have is the hardest situation or what we don't have is the most difficult thing. But, everybody is fighting their own struggle, right?
Mm.
If we focus on the past, we're never going to move forward. And we get stuck in the trauma of our past or, transferring things that have happened into the past onto new experiences and new relationships. And we then totally fuck them up because we're living in the past. If we focus too much on the future, all we're thinking about is all the things that we want, and then it causes us to think about all the things that we don't yet have. If we focus on the present, then we focus on what is real and what is at hand and what is available to us. And what that does is that gives us the power back. So if I take nothing away from my last 3 years of the Masters except this, it would be equality is saying that everybody should be equal and get the same thing. Equity is saying that everybody gets what they need as an individual in order to bring about a state of equality.
That's very powerful.
Right? And that's what we need to remember about ourselves. We can't all expect to have the same thing and reach the same state. Not all of us need the same things to be happy, right? To achieve what we need and get what we really, really what our hearts desire.
Absolutely.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
We all need something
Mm-hmm.
a little bit different. And so it's less about equality, and more about equity and finding that equity for ourselves and allowing other people the same fairness.
And then how did you get into spoken word poetry? What led you down that path?
When I started to come out of it and see these beautiful moments of light, and I started to write down some of my thoughts, and I have this poem that I wrote on December the 31st. Again, bear in mind, I only went back to work November the 14th. I know all the dates because everything was significant and everything has meaning now in a way that it didn't.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it didn't before, though. I didn't see meaning in things because I was just busy. I was too busy to search for meanings or to think about I wasn't thinking about what I was doing. I was autopiloting through my life. And then being upset that I wasn't, getting the things that I really wanted in my heart. And I didn't even know what I really wanted because I was so busy just doing without thinking. So I started to write. All of this wonder and passion and creativity and expression and writerliness came flowing forth, and I can't stop it now, and it's incredible. This was my first piece of writing that I wrote, so I'm going to read it to you. No creativity without chaos. There is no light with no darkness, no spring with no autumn, no sun with no moon, no day with no night, no success with no failure, no triumph with no challenge, no right with no left, no high with no low, and no life with no death. To strive for the balance, equilibrium is peace. In finding our strength, we can heal and release. Let go of the past, learning from shadows cast. Embrace all our flaws to find our life's cause. Love yourself all the more, because that's what life's for. And if you need a reminder, just work hard to be kinder. 2021 is almost done. The skies are clearing and the end is nearing. Yalla, 2022, we're ready for you. And the songs that we'll sing, whatever you bring. My friend, when I was better, right, she messaged me and said, I've just seen advertised on Facebook an open mic night. Do you want to go? By the way, it's the last thing she would ever want to do. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I went with her, and I got up on the stage and I did it. And it was wow. I have never felt a more natural flow, more peace, and more pride in myself. And I got the most incredible reaction, and people said, wow. And they came up to me afterwards and said, like, how long have you been writing? And people ask me this all the time now. How long have you been writing? Did you go to school? Did you study? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. It's just from within. It flows. I can't stop it. It's like a freaking tap. I can't turn it off. I wake up in the morning and there's words in my head. I just am living and breathing it. And I see moments of beauty and moments of darkness, and I have to write about it, and experiences for better, for worse, and I have to get it out. 4 months of now writing and putting myself out there, and it's really picking up now. And I've had, people coming to me and saying, I want to work with you. Can you write this piece of work? Can I pay? Really incredible opportunities that are coming when I'm ready to take them. But I think it's this opening yourself up to opportunities of, a year ago, would I have gone and done an open mic? Absolutely not. Right? I didn't even know I could write, let alone stand on a stage and do that, because I didn't have the confidence. I just wouldn't have done it. I don't even know if it was about confidence. A year ago, would I necessarily have, gone to meet you and had that conversation? I might have gone to meet you if I saw something you were selling and thought that looks nice, right? Would I have stayed and had a real conversation with you? Absolutely not. Didn't have time, right? But I came to you for one reason, and we ended up just really, really connecting and having a great conversation, which has led to us doing this. I would have potentially just bought the thing off you, gone home. We would never have had this moment together, right? And whoever's listening to this now or not would never be sharing this moment with us. And we all will find our different strategies and methods. For me, meditation has been something that's really, really helped me. I think we all find it in different places at different times in our life. There was a point running really worked for me until it didn't, right? But however, I say that, but I think it needs to be something more stable than that. I think we all need to find our anchor, whatever that may be. And that's the spirituality, and that's what God is for some people. That's what, again, exercise is for others. We all need to find our thing that keeps us steady and balanced.
But it would have to be an anchor in ourselves, right?
Yes.
You agree on that point?
Yeah, we cannot rely on others. That anchor has to be something that comes from ourselves and comes from a real decision to do it and make a change. And I sit here and I talk to you like this, and I you can hear my journey and think, oh, like it's not easy. This was hell, right? Like this rock bottom was awful. There is no magic pill, right? I talked about pills. There's no magic pill. You have to be able to say, I'm not giving up on myself. And I don't know where that comes from. I guess, like we've talked about a lot, this thing of connections and love. Like, I think ultimately what gave me the strength was the people around me loving me helped me to see my own self-worth. I saw what they saw in me and what they were saying to me at some point. Only when I was ready to accept it, I started to hear. I didn't believe it, but I started to see. And as I said, I got out of bed and I saw that there were people there, and it was my choice. I think we have to be able to take responsibility for our own peace of mind and our own, self-care, or whatever you want to call it. And again, like, find the things that speak to us, that will anchor us. You're right. Like, it can't be from an outside source. And I made a decision. It has to be a decision-making process that you make with yourself and not with anyone else. Like, at the end of the day, my very logical friend had some truth to the fact, it pains me to say it, doesn't really, but she had some truth to the fact that at the end of the day, only I could save myself.
And also, I think mental health is not like a once and for all given thing. Like, you do have to keep working on it, like on taking care of yourself, taking care of your mental health, and everything about yourself, really, and also others, if you can, obviously. But yeah, I think it's not a one and all done job, sort of.
Absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not. I sorry that I'm interrupting. It's just I'm so passionate about this one thing, and you've brought up something really important, and I don't want to lose this thought. It is absolutely a journey. There's no end to it. You have to allow yourself grace and be as compassionate with yourself as you would for others, right? And you have to know when to say, no, I can't go meet you for that drink or coffee or help you with that project because I need to look after myself. And that's really hard, especially when you're a really like a loving, giving person, and you're a good friend and you care about the people around you. And you have to be, but again, you have to be as compassionate for yourself as you are for other people.
Yeah, normalize self-care, I think, is probably a good thing to end on. Thank you so much for doing this, Juliet. I think you've provided many very inspirational insights, and I will have some links in the show notes if you do need help or would like some assistance from mental health professionals. And if a loved one or a friend of yours is in need of your help, please do stick with them. Please try to do your best and be supportive and be there for them. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Juliet?
Wow. I have loved every single moment of our conversation. As I said, it's all about, for me, just like living in the moment, and these conversations and these moments that bring us clarity and make us see who we are, and listening to other people and their stories in order to better ourselves and keep evolving and keep learning from each other to make the world a better place. Like, if we live in isolation and we don't get to know each other, and difference becomes the only thing that we know, we know that that's what leads to horrible events in the world, at worst, right? And at best, it just leads to us being isolated ourselves. And so I thank you, Nina, for the opportunity to talk to you like this. I've really, really enjoyed sharing with you. And again, I hope that if anyone is suffering themselves, or if you know someone that is suffering, like, again, like Nina said, you just be you and support them in the best possible way that you can.
Oh, thank you so much for doing this, Juliet. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Upfront Podcast. Please do consider subscribing wherever you are listening right now, so you won't miss out on any new episodes. You can also follow us on Instagram and on Facebook at The Upfront Podcast and join in the conversation. See you next time.